I would like to take you back to a little bit more of a thematic section. So on a journey to see how we're building knowledge at the intersection of the different sources that we work with, more on the vocabulary terms. It's one of the key areas for making the different parts of the project interoperable. It's the realm of thesauri. Now, what is a thesaurus? It is not a dinosaur, but there are different approaches to explaining the term. Its main components are concepts that are placed in some kind of relationship to each other. And we can understand it as a system of concepts that is given a logical structure. So more than just being a dictionary, a thesaurus is a work that marks the semantic powers and limits between the concepts, and also by naming terms, synonyms, antonyms, hierarchies, and definitions. And here is why this is relevant. The terms associated with our records are our pathway to information. The way of searching that we are most used to is the search bar. We type in a keyword and get a display of results, where this keyword is found within our data collection. And in our portal, we further want to be able to understand the people behind the objects a bit more, for example, by looking at which production steps, at which point they have been involved with. And this will allow to reconstruct some of the interpersonal relationships. For example, discovering that two artists have worked in a close proximity over a certain period of time and are therefore likely to have met each other. So we're going beyond that term level, but still keeping the connection to the concepts. Let's discuss this on a base study that is relevant for BSO. Again, this is the chart for the definition of roles. These are the print production steps, the object types they refer to, and the persons and their roles involved with it. And what we do in BSO is that we bring information from the different institutions together. These all have slightly different ways in which they describe their information. Part of it is based on the data, and part of it is based on how the institution works. The terms may exist in different languages and in ways of spelling, as you can see here. And as researchers, we might code switch between different terms with relative ease. But however, in order to use computer applications on our data, we need to teach the computer how the terms relate within and across those linguistic categories. For example, here, dessiner and dessiner is spelled differently. Of course, we understand it, but the computer has to have this extra step. The main point that I want to make is that we need to be careful not to conflate terms and interpretations. Look at this example here. The caption makes a statement about 3 different types of information associated with the print. We have a person, an event type, and a temporal entity. And please note that no role per se is noted with the object. Cognitively, of course, we're quick to bridge this gap, and we're declaring, if we have a name and a descriptor of the event here, that the person visual in this case was the artist, inventor, or drawer, or whatever term we choose to describe this role. But you can also quickly see that this is problematic. Firstly, there might be several possible interpretations of one action descriptor, artist, inventor, drawer, whatever. And secondly, the descriptors of the action might not always be semantically clear either. For example, and we've been discussing this internally quite a bit, excudit, exc here in the caption, could be understood as publisher or engraver. A correlative argumentation that the descriptor of the action equals the role is therefore insufficient. So it's not semantically clear in this case. And the problem touches directly upon one of the key discourses of art history, one we always seem to circle back to from the days of Aristotle to today. I won't go into the whole history of that, but what is important is this discussion of how vision and knowledge relate, or in other words, how seeing is distinct from knowing. In the realm of digital visual studies, this of course also touches upon how data and interpretation can be separated from each other, or how they interrelate. And I suggest that this epistemological process can benefit from the semantic web environment. Automation allows making these steps intentionally and thereby interrupts our habits. The explicit separation of data and interpretive levels can inspire us to think about the implications of what we do and how we do it for the benefit of research outcome quality. So let's look at how we look and how we gain understanding from it. The basic components for an art historical analysis are the subject, the one who sees, and the object, the thing that is seen. The subject observes the object. Object features to be seen include material, the content, the appearance, style, etc. These observations can be documented as such, through annotation, for example. Next, we might be interested in understanding what the object features mean. To understand, we might compare our observations with further references. These can be primary or secondary literature, visual materials, or other things. Reflecting on that comparison, we can then phrase a hypothesis for our interpretation. And finally, and this is where we grow knowledge, we can propose a new argument. In this workflow, the argument is based on visual evidence gathered through observation and its interpretation in the context of what is known about the object already. Let's run through this with an example. First, we look at the print and we make our observation-based annotation of the caption here, Emil Büchel, Dale, 1761. In trying to understand what we are looking at, we might consult secondary sources. And for example, a source we often refer to is Steinman's terms in print addresses. The source says, Steinman's source says that del is the abbreviated Latin verb in the past tense that can be generally translated as has drawn. So reflecting on this information, we can interpret that del means delinea vid and must mean has drawn, the same thing in our own caption. We therefore propose a new statement suggesting that the person who has drawn this print is M. Büchel, as his name is noted alongside the verb, and that his role in the production was the one of artist. That's our new addition to this knowledge. Because terms like delinea vid or excudi repeatedly appear in the captions, we can use automation to assist the researchers. SARI provides several applications to help that kind of data collection or data expansion. Those range from viewers that digitally display text and images at the observation level, to annotation features such as semantically based input forms, and workspaces in which notes, snippets, images, etc. can be collected and filtered, to ways of displaying information in ways that provokes creative thinking and new insights. It also means that the value of the original metadata at the observation and at the data level remains unchanged, but can be linked to new statements made in reaction to existing information. So all the information stays within the knowledge graph, can be documented. What we also need though, as soon as we work with recurring terms, are project-specific thesauri. So back to the thesauri. Which ones exist for us to refer to when we talk about roles in BSO? On one hand, we work with certain logic already implicit in the information that has been noted in the records of the libraries that have shared their data with us, the National Library and the Central Library. The source of these terms is, on one hand, the objects themselves that bear certain captions, but also best practice standards on how to record information. And Florian, I think, has already mentioned the mark-based Central Library codes, which are a standard that is used. On the other hand, we also use some external, there are also external references that are relevant, which contain concepts that we are working with together with a systematic logic. An example of this is the Getty Art and Architecture Thesaurus for General Cultural Heritage Terms and its Swiss translation, to which SARI is also committed as another project. And regarding print production terms, another terminology that our project refers to, as I mentioned it already, is the Steinman's terms in print addresses. And of course, we also have, for example, Michael Matil as a domain expert to bring his subject knowledge into the project. All these sources work together and they work to specific standards and represent a certain way of thinking about object information, about the kind of concepts that are used around them. Maybe just a quick note on the Getty Art and Architecture Thesaurus and the Steinman and how they differ. The Getty AAT is a widely used structured vocabulary containing concepts descriptions and metadata. It's a standard in many cultural heritage projects, and it's pivot for co-referencing of other vocabularies. And of interest for BSO is particularly the multilingual translation provided by the Swiss AAT initiative. And the Steinman terms, on the other hand, they're not a thesaurus per se, but a multilingual collection of terms appearing in print captions. So what Steinman did is that he went through a lot of prints and he collected the terms appearing as captions below the prints in the different languages, in Latin, in French, in Dutch, in whatever. It's an invaluable source for very specific terms and their abbreviations, and that the Getty at the moment lacks. To make the Steinman list usable to work together with domain expertise, we use a tool called Eqvoc for creating a SCOS thesaurus. So this is the way how we go from this just list of terms to a usable vocabulary, usable thesaurus. And you might be familiar with SCOS. This is also a web standard that can be exported as RDF. So it's what we can integrate into the BSO knowledge graph as a source as well. Let's return to our case study though. In this caption, we're interested in the middle part here, exc. The term describing the action that was performed on the object. And if you look that up in the Getty on the left or in the Steinman list on the right, we can see that both thesauri or both term collections list the term excluded as inscriptions, not necessarily as roles. So again, going back to that idea of role versus just informational object. Excuse me. So what we need to do is to create an input form that allows us, A, to select from a thesaurus in order to annotate the content of the captions, and B, also ensure that when a certain term is selected from the thesaurus, any additional information gets added onto the correct location in the graph. Ideally, this is an input form for making propositions about the artist's role that draws on the logic of the knowledge graph and the thesaurus, so that we get both, the benefit of both, so to say. Yes, and this just summarizes this again. Sorry. Just to summarize, we have harvested relevant terms from our source data, the libraries, and from domain-specific users, Steinman list and Michel Mathieu's expertise, while also making sure that our work links into existing initiatives like the AAT and can be used interoperably within the realm of open linked humanities data. All these components together are the building block of what we call the BSO thesaurus. It's a working project. Now I just want to quickly hand over to my colleague Sarah, who is our senior data curator, who will briefly explain how to do the alignment of BSO terms with the AAT thesaurus. Over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, maybe? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, I want to give a short overview about the alignment between BSO terms and the AAT. And it's a first attempt. And here you see how we did it in a spreadsheet first. The goal was to have an idea about the level of coverage between BSO terms and AAT and the availability of the translations in German, French, and Italian. And how we did it, Florian extracted a list of terms from the Zentralbibliothek and from the Nationalbibliothek. I think that the terms comes from the raw data from the field, the mark field 300. And as you can see, there are several types of words here. You have materials, you have objects, you have process, you have colors. And we made a manual alignment. Why did we made it manually and not automatically? Because in one hand we have the terms in German, and at the other hand we have in AAT the terms are primary in English. And there exists also the graphic vocabulary in Germany, and we also made an alignment with this graphic vocabulary. And last week we made also an alignment with the BSO thesaurus already in ICVOC. It is maybe not complete, but it was only to have a first overview. Next, please, Stephanie. And, oh, no, sorry, back. Yeah, thank you. And here you have a zoom. And what I want to show with this is that as for each alignment process, you encounter some difficulties. For example, in the first line, you see the term Kreide. And in the AAT, it could refer for the material or the object, the crayon. Then, without the context, you do not know what you wanted to say. If it was the material or the object. Another example is for Kupfertisch. Stich, and in this case it could refer to the method of copper engraving or to the visual work copper engravings. Another thing is the spelling, and for example here you have the example of Kreidelithography. Once it is written with F, in the other case it is written with PH. Okay, in this case it is quite easy, I think, to solve this problem by machine, but you can imagine that you can have in other cases other problems. And the different spellings are a difficulty, but also the singular or the plural. In some case you have Kupfertisch in singular, and the other case you have Kupferstiche in plural. And then I can give some, then when you have done all the mappings between the BSO terms and the AAT, we came to 30-20 alignments, AAT IDs. And I can here give some statistics from the 320 alignments. 80 concepts do not have any mappings, but it is here not only a general overview, because in the case of Kreidelithography and with F and PH, I think it is quite easy to solve it. And in one case, it has a mapping. In the other case, it has no mapping. And about the translations, then we could find that the half of the AAT terms are available in German, a third is available in French, and a quarter is available in Italian. Next, please, Stephanie. And here we did also the same with the occupations or the roles. Here you can see what is interesting is that you have more translations, more mappings. And in this case, you have 80% of the AAT concepts which have already a translation in German. 35% is already available in French and less than 10% available in Italian. So it was only a short update. Thank you.